I never imagined I'd see my own daughter furious, screaming at me like a madwoman because I refused to give her the money I'd earned from selling my ranch. I certainly never thought my oldest son would defend her so violently that he'd end up breaking one of my ribs with a shove. But what neither of them knew was that in exactly 20 minutes, they would bitterly regret the day they were born, when they discovered the truth I had been quietly holding on to. My name is Mary. I'm 64 years old, and my whole life I've been a simple, hard-working woman, the kind who gets up every day at 5:30 in the morning to make coffee and think about everything that needs to be done. I live in a modest little house on the outskirts of town with a small garden where I grow tomatoes and herbs, and where every morning I greet my chickens before feeding them. My routine has been the same for years: black coffee with no sugar, buttered toast, and then I sit on the porch to watch the sunrise while I plan my day. I've been a widow for 8 years. My husband, Evan, died of a sudden heart attack, leaving me alone with a ranch we had inherited from his parents, but it was in very poor condition. It was a large property, almost 50 acres, but it needed a tremendous amount of work and money to be productive again. For all these years, while my children Matt and Paula lived their lives in the city, I managed as best I could to stay afloat. I worked cleaning houses, selling homemade pies on the weekends, and even babysitting for neighbors just to cover my basic expenses. I never asked my children for financial help because I knew they had their own responsibilities, and besides, I've always been a proud woman, the kind who prefers to solve her problems alone rather than be a burden to anyone. The ranch had become a constant worry. The roofs leaked, the fences were broken, and the vegetation had grown so thick it looked like an abandoned jungle. Several neighbors had suggested I sell it, but I always refused because I felt like I would be betraying Evan's memory. That land had been his family's dream for generations, and getting rid of it felt like tearing out a piece of my own heart. But 6 months ago, everything changed. I received an unexpected visit from a very well-dressed man in a gray suit and red tie, who introduced himself as a representative of a construction company. He explained that they were interested in buying my ranch to develop a housing project, and when he mentioned the figure they were willing to pay, I almost fainted right there. $180,000. Never in my life had I heard such a large sum of money directed at me. The man told me the location of my property was perfect for building a modern subdivision, and they were willing to pay that price without haggling, as long as I was willing to sign the papers in the next few weeks. For days, I couldn't sleep thinking about that offer. I would get up in the middle of the night and walk around the ranch, remembering all the happy moments I had lived there with Evan, but also thinking about all the possibilities that money could bring into my life. I could fix up my little house, buy new clothes, travel to see my grandchildren who live far away, and above all, have the financial peace of mind I had never had in my 64 years of life. Finally, after much reflection and even dreaming of Evan asking me to be happy, I made the hardest decision of my life. I sold the ranch. The paperwork was surprisingly fast, and in less than a month, I had an amount of money in my bank account that I never thought I would possess. The first thing I did after receiving the money was to remain in absolute silence. I didn't tell anyone, not even my neighbor Gloria, who had always been like a sister to me and knew all my secrets. Something inside me told me to keep this information private until I decided exactly what to do with such a fortune. I stored the sale documents in a metal box I keep under my bed, along with the few pieces of jewelry my mother had left me. For the first 2 weeks after the sale, my life went on exactly the same. I got up at 5:30, made my coffee, fed my chickens, and continued with my usual routine. The only difference was that now, when I sat on the porch in the evenings, a secret smile would appear on my face as I thought about all the wonderful things I could do with that money. I had started making a mental list of my priorities. First, I wanted to completely fix up my little house, replace the roof that leaked during rainstorms, paint the faded walls, install a new bathroom because mine was over 20 years old, and buy a modern stove to replace the old one that sometimes wouldn't light properly. I also thought about buying a used but reliable pickup truck because I was tired of depending on the public bus to go to town. But above all, there was something very special I wanted to do with that money, something I had been planning in secret and knew would change the lives of many people. However, it wasn't yet time to reveal it. I didn't even dare to say it out loud to myself, for fear that my emotions would betray me. Everything changed one Thursday afternoon while I was watering my tomato plants. I heard the engine of a car approaching on the dirt road leading to my house, and when I looked up, I saw my daughter Paula's white car parking in front of my door. I was surprised to see her on a weekday because she worked in an office in the city and usually only visited on Sundays. Paula got out of the car with a strange smile, one of those smiles I knew very well because I had seen it since she was a little girl. It was the smile she put on when she wanted to ask me for something important or when she had gotten into some mischief. She was wearing a yellow dress I had never seen before, high heels that sank into the dirt of my yard, and a large handbag slung over her arm. "Mom, what a nice surprise to find you out here," she said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. "I need to talk to you about something very important." I invited her into the house and prepared her a glass of cold water with ice. We sat in my small living room, she on the sofa, and I in my favorite chair, the wooden rocker that had belonged to my grandmother. Paula seemed nervous, fidgeting with her car keys and avoiding direct eye contact. "Mom," she began in a soft voice, "yesterday I was talking to Juliet, the one who lives near where your ranch was, and she told me something that really surprised me." My heart began to beat faster. I knew exactly where this conversation was headed, and a sense of alarm started to grow in my chest. Juliet was the biggest gossip in the area, and she had obviously seen all the activity from the construction company around my property. "She told me you sold the ranch." "Mom, is that true?" Paula was now looking at me intently, with the same expression she had when she was a teenager and would question me about whether I'd found something suspicious in her room. I couldn't deny the truth to my own daughter, especially when it was obvious she already knew, so I nodded slowly. "Yes, Paula, I sold the ranch a few weeks ago." My daughter's eyes lit up in a way I had never seen before, as if she had just won the lottery. "Oh, Mom, that's wonderful news. And how much did you sell it for? It must have been for a good amount, right?" Something in her tone made me very uncomfortable. It wasn't the reaction I had expected from a daughter concerned about her mother. She didn't ask how I felt about selling her father's land, or if it had been a difficult decision, or if I needed emotional support. She just wanted to know how much money I had received. "It was a fair sale," I replied cautiously, without giving specific details about the amount. Paula leaned forward, getting closer to me. "Mom, you know you can trust me. I'm your daughter, and I'm very concerned about your future. I imagine it must have been a considerable amount, and I want to make sure you're making the best decisions for your financial security." Her words sounded nice, but there was something about her attitude I didn't like at all. It was as if I was talking to a salesperson trying to convince me to buy something, not my daughter, who was genuinely worried about my well-being. "Paula, I appreciate your concern, but I'm perfectly capable of managing my own financial affairs." "Of course, Mom. I didn't mean you weren't capable." Her voice softened, but I could detect a hint of frustration. "It's just that, well, Arthur and I have been going through some financial problems lately. The business hasn't been doing as well as we hoped, and I thought that maybe—" There it was, the real reason for her unscheduled visit. She hadn't come to see me because she was worried about me, or because she wanted to spend time with her mother. She had come because she found out I had money, and she wanted a piece of it. "Maybe what, Paula?" I asked, though I already knew exactly what she was going to say. "Maybe you could help us out a little." "Mom, I'm not asking for charity. It's just a temporary loan until the business stabilizes. You could lend us about $20,000 or $30,000, and I promise we'll pay you back with interest as soon as we can." I remained silent for several seconds, looking at my daughter's face and trying to process what I had just heard. $20,000 or $30,000 was not a small amount, and the casual way she had asked for it left me completely bewildered. It was as if she were asking to borrow $20 for groceries, not a fortune that represented years of my life's work. "Paula," I said in a firm voice, "that money from the sale of the ranch is not for lending to anyone. I have my own plans for it." The expression on her face changed immediately. The sweet smile vanished and was replaced by a scowl of disapproval that painfully reminded me of when she was a spoiled child who didn't get what she wanted. "What plans, Mom? What are you going to do with so much money at your age? It's not like you're going to buy a new house or travel the world. It would be much smarter to invest that money in something productive, like Arthur's and my business." Her words hurt me deeply. "At my age?" I repeated, feeling as if she had slapped me. "Are you telling me that because I'm 64, I no longer have the right to enjoy my own money?" "No, Mom, that's not what I meant," she quickly replied, but I could see in her eyes that it was exactly what she meant. "It's just that, well, it would be more practical if the money were used for something that benefits the whole family." "The whole family," I muttered, feeling indignation rising in my chest. "And when did the whole family help me when I was struggling alone to support myself after your father died? When did the whole family care whether I had enough money for food or medicine?" Paula turned as red as a tomato. "Mom, we didn't know you were going through difficulties. If you had asked for help—" "You didn't know," I interrupted, getting up from my rocker. "You didn't know I was cleaning other people's houses at 60 years old? You didn't know I sold pies on weekends to pay the electricity bill? You didn't know I got up at 4 a.m. to go babysit because I needed every dollar I could earn?" My daughter looked down, clearly uncomfortable with the conversation. "Mom, I understand you've been through tough times, but things are different now. Now you have money, and we really need help." "And why do you need help?" I asked, crossing my arms. "The last time we spoke, you told me the business was doing great, that you had gotten several new clients." Paula squirmed on the sofa, obviously uncomfortable having to admit the truth. "Well, it's just that Arthur made some investments that didn't turn out as we expected, and then we had some unexpected expenses." "What kind of unexpected expenses, Paula?" "We bought a new car, remodeled the house, and Arthur invested in some stocks that, well, we lost a lot of money." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My daughter and her husband had squandered their money on luxuries and bad investments, and now they wanted me to bail them out with the money I had earned from selling the property I had struggled to maintain for years. "So you spent your money irresponsibly, and now you want me to pay the consequences of your bad decisions," I said, feeling anger begin to boil in my veins. "It's not like that, Mom. We just need a small loan to get back on our feet. It's an investment in your family's future." "My family," I repeated bitterly. Where was my family when I needed help? Where was my family when my knees ached so much from scrubbing floors that I could barely walk at night? Where was my family when I had to choose between buying medicine or buying food? Paula stood up abruptly and I could see her patience was running out. All right, Mom, we get it. You're resentful, but you can't punish us forever for past mistakes. I'm not punishing you, Paula. I'm simply protecting what is rightfully mine. But that money comes from Dad's ranch. That property was our inheritance, too. Her words hit me like a lightning bolt. Your inheritance? I shouted, feeling all my composure vanish. Your inheritance? That ranch was abandoned for years while I was killing myself trying to maintain it. You never lifted a finger to help with the expenses, with the maintenance, with anything. And now that I've turned it into money with my effort and my decision, it turns out it's your inheritance. Inheritance is inheritance, Mom. It doesn't matter if you sold it or not. At that moment, I heard the engine of another vehicle approaching. Through the window, I saw my son Matt's black pickup truck parking next to Paula's car. My heart sank because I knew this visit was no coincidence. Evidently, Paula had planned all of this in advance. Matt walked into the house without even knocking, as if it were his own home. He's a tall, heavy-set man of 35, with a scruffy beard and always dressed in old T-shirts and torn jeans. He had gained a lot of weight in recent years and had that tired look of someone who drinks more than he should. "Hey, Mom," he said with a forced smile. "How are you? Paula told me the good news about the ranch." "Of course she told you," I muttered, sitting back down in my rocker because I felt my legs trembling with sheer indignation. Matt sat down heavily on the sofa next to his sister, and I could immediately smell beer on his breath. It was only 3 p.m, and he had already been drinking. "Mom," Paula explained the situation, he said, in that raspy voice he used when trying to sound serious. "I think we should talk as a family about how to best handle this money." "There's nothing to talk about, Matt. The money is mine, and I will decide what to do with it." "Mom, be reasonable," Paula intervened. "We're not asking you to give us everything. We just want you to help us a little. Matt has his financial problems, too." I looked at my oldest son, this 35-year-old man who had never been able to hold a job for more than 6 months. "And what are your financial problems, Matt?" He shifted uncomfortably on the sofa. "Well, I'm behind on some house payments, and I have some outstanding debts." "What kind of debts?" "That doesn't matter, Mom. What matters is that we're family, and families help each other." "Families help each other," I repeated slowly. "How interesting that you say that now, after 8 years in which I practically didn't exist for you." The 2 siblings glanced at each other with that complicity I knew so well from their childhood. It was the same look they exchanged when they had broken something in the house and were deciding what lie to tell me. But now they were adults, and that look scared me much more than when they were 8 and 10 years old. "Mom," Matt said, leaning forward, "I think you're being a little unfair. We've always been there for you." "Always been there," I laughed bitterly. "Matt, when was the last time you visited me without needing something? When was the last time you called just to ask how I was?" "Mom, you know I work a lot." "You work a lot," I interrupted. "You can barely keep a job for more than a few months. And when you do have a job, you spend it all on beer and those video poker machines at the bar." Matt's face turned beet red. "That's not true. I don't have a gambling problem." "Please, Matt, the whole town knows you owe money at 3 different bars. Last week, Arthur's wife told me you borrowed $500 for an emergency, and Zeke told me he saw you spending it on the slot machines." Paula quickly intervened, clearly trying to calm the situation. "Mom, it doesn't matter what happened before. What's important is the present, and in the present, we are a family that needs to help each other." "A family." I stood up again, feeling all the frustration accumulated over the years begin to surface. A family that only shows up when there's money involved. A family that completely ignored me for 8 years while I struggled alone to survive. We didn't ignore you, Paula shouted, finally losing her composure. We had our own responsibilities. We couldn't be looking after you all the time. Of course you couldn't, I replied with sarcasm. You were too busy spending money on new cars and home renovations while I was cleaning other people's toilets to be able to eat. Matt stood up, and his large frame suddenly intimidated me. When he got angry, his voice became very deep and his eyes turned red. Mom, stop playing the victim. If you had financial problems, you should have told us. Playing the victim. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Matt, you knew perfectly well what my situation was. You knew I lived alone, that I was a widow, that I had no steady income. But you were so busy with your own lives that you never bothered to ask if I needed help. Because you were always too proud, Paula yelled. You always said you could handle it on your own. Because I had no other choice. Because my own children had abandoned me. The atmosphere in the small living room had become so tense, it felt like the air itself was hard to breathe. Matt started pacing back and forth like a caged animal, while Paula had stood up and was looking at me with an expression of pure frustration. All right, Mom, Matt said, stopping in front of me. Let's say you're right, and we were terrible children. Does that mean you're going to punish us forever? Does that mean you're never going to forgive us? It's not about punishment or forgiveness, Matt. It's about me having plans for that money. And those plans don't include bailing you out of your own irresponsibility. What plans? Paula asked in a shrill voice. You never do anything exciting. You never spend money on yourself. What are you going to do? Hide it under the mattress until you die. Her words wounded me deeply, but they also ignited a fury I hadn't felt in years. You want to know my plans? I shouted. My plans are to never have to worry about money again. My plans are to be able to go to the doctor when I feel sick without having to calculate if I can afford the visit. My plans are to be able to buy the food I want without having to check every dollar. That's exactly what we're saying, Matt exclaimed. You already have all that secured. You have more money than you could possibly spend in the rest of your life. That's why it would be smart to share a little with your family. The rest of my life, I repeated, feeling tears begin to burn my eyes. So now it turns out I'm so old that it's not worth it for me to enjoy my own money. That's not it, Mom. Paula approached me with her arms outstretched, as if to hug me, but I stepped back. It's just that, well, at your age, how much can you really need? At that moment, something inside me broke. All the emotional wounds I had been carrying for years, all the loneliness, all the abandonment, all the silent struggle, it all erupted like a volcano. Get out! I screamed in a voice I didn't even recognize. Get out of my house right now! Mom, calm down. Matt tried to approach, but I grabbed the broom from the corner and held it up like a weapon. Don't come near me. Get out. I don't want to see you again until you learn to respect me. You're acting like a crazy person, Paula shouted. We just want to help you make smart decisions. Help me, I laughed hysterically. 8 years without helping me, and now you want to help me. The only help you want is to help yourselves to my money. Matt became more aggressive, moving dangerously toward me. Mom, you're going to give us that money because we have a right to it. That ranch was Dad's, and we are his children. I maintained that ranch by myself for 8 years. I paid the taxes. I worried about it. You never did anything. It doesn't matter. Paula had also become aggressive. Inheritance is inheritance. There is no inheritance, I yelled. The ranch is gone. I sold it, and the money is mine. At that moment, Matt did something I never thought he would do. He got so close to me that I could feel his beer-laced breath on my face and said in a threatening voice, Mom, you are going to give us that money. We are your children, and we have a right to it. If you don't give it to us the easy way, we'll have to find other ways. "Are you threatening me, Matt?" I asked, though my voice trembled with fear. "I'm not threatening you, Mom. I'm explaining reality. That money should be for the whole family, and if you don't understand that, we'll have to make you understand." Paula nodded in full support of her brother. At that moment, I realized my own children had become dangerous strangers, people capable of anything for money. "Get out," I said in a low but firm voice. "Get out of my house right now. And don't come back until you're willing to apologize for everything you've said to me today." The two of them headed for the door, but not with the defeated attitude I expected. Instead, they walked slowly, exchanging glances that sent shivers down my spine. Before leaving, Matt turned to me with an expression I had never seen on his face, a mixture of rage and determination that chilled my blood. "This isn't over, Mom," he said in a low, menacing voice. "You're going to reconsider your decision because we're not going to stand by with our hands crossed while you keep all our money." "It's not your money," I replied, trying to sound braver than I felt. "And if you come back to my house with that attitude, I'll call the police." Paula let out a sarcastic laugh. "The police? Why? For coming to visit our own mother? Mom, I think the loneliness is getting to your head. Maybe you should see a doctor." Her words hit me like daggers. "Are you saying I'm crazy?" "I'm not saying you're crazy," Paula replied with false sweetness. "But you're making very strange decisions for a person your age. Maybe you need help managing so much money. Maybe you need someone else to make those decisions for you." The fear I felt at that moment was unlike anything I had ever experienced before. It wasn't just physical fear, but a deep terror that my own children were capable of harming me in ways I couldn't even imagine. "Leave," I told them, but my voice sounded weak and broken. "Please, just leave and let me be." "We're leaving, Mom," Matt said, "but we'll be back. And next time, I hope you've reflected on your selfishness." After they left, I sat in my rocker for hours, trembling not from the cold, but from shock. I couldn't believe that the children I had raised, to whom I had given all my love and my life, had become such cruel and greedy people. I felt as though I had met two dangerous strangers, not my own children. That night, I couldn't sleep at all. Every noise made me jump, thinking they might have returned. I got up several times to check that all the doors and windows were securely locked, something I had never done before in my life, because I had always felt safe in my own home. The next day, I tried to continue with my normal routine, but everything had changed. When I went to feed my chickens, my hands were shaking so much that I spilled half the corn on the ground. When I tried to water my plants, I couldn't concentrate and ended up soaking the soil far more than necessary. Around noon, I received a phone call that nearly made my heart stop. It was Paula, but her voice sounded completely different from the day before. Now she spoke with a sweet, concerned tone, as if nothing bad had happened between us. "Mom," she said, "I hope you slept well last night. I was thinking a lot about our conversation yesterday, and I think maybe we both said things we regret." "Paula, I don't regret anything I said yesterday." "Oh, Mom, don't be like that. You know we love you very much, and the last thing we'd want is to make you feel bad. Maybe we could find a solution that works for everyone." Her change in attitude made me even more nervous than her aggression had. At least when she was angry, I knew what I was dealing with. This new manipulative version of my daughter scared me much more. "There's nothing to negotiate, Paula. My decision is final." "Mom, why don't we meet again? But this time in a more relaxed setting. We could go have lunch at the diner downtown, just you and me, like mother and daughter. No pressure, no arguments, just a civilized conversation." "I don't want to have any more conversations on this topic." "Mom, please just give me a chance to explain our situation better. Maybe I didn't express myself correctly yesterday." Maybe if you listened more calmly, you could understand why we need your help. Her help. Something in her tone made me suspect she had ulterior motives, but a part of me wanted to believe that maybe she had truly realized her mistake and wanted to apologize genuinely. "All right," I finally said, "but let it be clear that I am not changing my mind about the money. Of course, Mom, I just want us to have a mother-daughter conversation." We agreed to meet the next day at the Golden Corner Diner, a small but cozy place in the center of town that served the best home-style food in the region. It was a public place with lots of people where I would feel safe. That night I slept poorly again, plagued by strange nightmares where Matt and Paula chased me through the house demanding money. In one of the dreams, they had brought lawyers and police to force me to hand over everything, claiming I was too old to make my own decisions. The next day, I got ready with special care. I put on my favorite pink dress, the one my late husband Evan had given me for my 50th birthday, and styled my hair the way I liked it best. I wanted to look dignified and respectable, like the strong woman I had been all my life. I arrived at the diner 15 minutes early and asked for a table near the window where I could see the street. Paula arrived exactly on time, but she wasn't alone. Arthur was with her, and that immediately put me on high alert. Arthur is a man in his 40s, thin, with a black mustache, and always dressed in shirts that seemed too fancy for his personality. From the day I met him, something about him had seemed fake, as if he were always acting. He had that smile that never reached his eyes and a way of speaking that sounded like he was constantly trying to sell you something. "Hello, mother-in-law," he said with that false smile, giving me a kiss on the cheek that made me flinch. "So good to see you. I hope you don't mind that I came along." Paula thought it would be good for me to be part of this family conversation too. "Actually, I do mind," I replied directly, because this was a conversation between my daughter and me. Paula quickly intervened. "Mom, Arthur is part of the family. Besides, he knows a lot about finances and business, and I thought maybe he could help us find a solution that benefits everyone. I already told you, there's nothing to negotiate." Arthur leaned forward with that expression he put on when he thought he was being very clever. "Mother-in-law, allow me to explain something about family finances. When a family has significant resources, the smartest thing to do is to distribute those resources strategically to maximize the benefit for all members. Arthur, with all due respect, my finances are none of your business. But they are my business, mother-in-law, because I am your daughter's husband. What affects Paula affects me, and what affects us affects our children, your grandchildren." The mention of my grandchildren particularly annoyed me because I knew he was using it as a manipulation tool. My grandchildren are perfectly well cared for, and if you two have financial problems, that is your responsibility, not mine. Mother-in-law, Arthur lowered his voice as if he were about to tell me a secret. "Let me be completely honest with you. We are in a very difficult situation. If we don't get some money soon, we could lose the house. Do you really want your grandchildren to become homeless?" Paula nodded dramatically, as if she were acting in a soap opera. "It's true, Mom. The kids don't understand why we suddenly can't buy them the things they need. Yesterday, my little girl asked me why she couldn't take piano lessons anymore, and I didn't know what to tell her. Their attempts at emotional manipulation disgusted me. Paula, if your children need something, you can talk to me specifically about those needs, but I'm not going to give you thousands of dollars so you and your husband can continue living beyond your means." Arthur changed his strategy, adopting a more aggressive tone. "Mother-in-law, I don't think you're understanding the seriousness of the situation. This isn't just a request for help. We have legal rights to that inheritance." "Legal rights?" I laughed bitterly. "What legal rights? I sold my property. a property that was in my name, and the money is in my bank account. The property was your husband's inheritance, and according to the law, children have rights to their father's inheritance. Arthur, you clearly know nothing about the law. When my husband died, that property legally passed to me. I paid the taxes for 8 years. I kept the documents up to date. I took care of everything. Legally, that ranch was entirely mine. Arthur became visibly annoyed when he realized he had no valid legal argument. His face flushed, and he began to drum his fingers nervously on the table. Paula, for her part, had adopted that victim expression she had perfected since adolescence. "Mom," she said in a broken voice, as if she were about to cry, "I can't believe you're being so cruel to your own family. Are you really going to let your grandchildren suffer because of your selfishness?" "I'm not being cruel, Paula. I'm a woman who has finally learned to value herself after years of being ignored by her own children." Arthur intervened with a smile that sent chills down my spine. "Mother-in-law, maybe we should approach this from another perspective. A woman your age, living alone, with so much money. Don't you think that's dangerous? There are many criminals who specialize in robbing elderly people with considerable savings." His words sounded like a barely disguised threat. "Are you threatening me, Arthur?" "Of course not, mother-in-law. I'm just concerned for your safety. It would be terrible if something bad happened to you, especially now that you have so much cash." The waiter approached to take our order, but I had completely lost my appetite. The conversation had taken a terrifying turn, and I realized that my own family was capable of intimidating me in ways I had never imagined. "I'm not ordering anything," I told the waiter. "I'm leaving right now." "Mom, please don't go," Paula pleaded, grabbing my arm as I stood up. "We haven't finished talking yet." "Yes, we have," I replied, pulling my arm free from her grasp. "And let me be very clear. I am not giving you a single penny of my money, no matter how much you threaten or manipulate me." "We're not threatening you," Paula yelled, loud enough for other people in the diner to turn and look at us. "We just want you to be reasonable." "Being reasonable would mean giving you my money so you can continue to live irresponsibly," I said, feeling the anger boil in my veins again. "But I'm not going to be reasonable in that way." I walked out of the diner as quickly as I could, but I could hear Arthur telling Paula, "Don't worry, my love. There are other ways to solve this problem." On the bus ride home, my hands were shaking so much I could barely hold on. Arthur's words echoed in my head like an alarm bell. There are other ways to solve this problem. What did he mean by that? That night, I called my neighbor Gloria, the only person in the world I truly trusted. Gloria was 70. She had been a widow for longer than I had, and she had always been like an older sister to me. I told her everything that had happened, from the sale of the ranch to Arthur's veiled threats. "Mary," Gloria said in a serious voice, "your children have become dangerous. You can't stay alone in your house while they're acting like this. What am I supposed to do, Gloria? Hide from my own children?" "Not hide, but protect yourself. Have you thought about talking to the police? And tell them what? That my kids asked for money and I refused? I haven't been physically harmed." "Yet," Gloria said. "Mary, that word, yet, scares me. I think you should stay at my house for a few days until things calm down." That night I stayed at Gloria's, but I couldn't sleep a wink. Every noise made me jump, thinking maybe Matt and Paula had come looking for me. Around 3 a.m, Gloria got up for a glass of water and found me awake, staring out the window. "Mary, you have to tell me the truth," she said, sitting down next to me. "What do you really need that money for? Because I know you, and I know you're not just hoarding it out of greed." For the first time since I sold the ranch, I told someone what my true plans for the money were. Gloria listened in silence, and when I finished speaking, she had tears in her eyes. "Oh, Mary," she said, hugging me, "you are an incredible woman. Your children don't even deserve to know the truth of what you plan to do." The next day, I went back to my house because I couldn't hide forever. But as soon as I arrived, I realized something was very wrong. The front door had marks around the lock, as if someone had tried to force it open. Some of my plants were trampled, and there were large boot prints in the dirt of my garden. Inside the house, although nothing had been stolen, everything had been slightly moved. My drawers were ajar, my papers had been shuffled, and the metal box where I kept the sale documents had been moved from its hiding place under the bed. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I would have a heart attack. Someone had been in my house while I was gone, and it wasn't hard to guess who it had been. Matt had a key to my house from years ago for emergencies, and he had obviously decided to use it to look for information about my money. I immediately called to have the locks changed, but the locksmith said he couldn't come until the next day. That night, I barricaded myself in my room, wedging a chair under the doorknob and sleeping with a kitchen knife under my pillow. The next morning, while waiting for the locksmith, I received an unexpected visitor. It was Zeke, a second cousin of my late husband, a man in his 50s who worked as a mechanic in town. Zeke had always been a quiet, honest person, and I was very surprised to see him at my house so early in the morning. "Cousin Mary," he said with a worried expression, "I need to talk to you about something very serious. Last night I was at the Golden Eagle Bar and Grill, and I overheard a conversation that left me very concerned." "What kind of conversation, Zeke?" "Your son Matt was there, very drunk, talking to some men I didn't like the look of at all. They were making plans that involve you." My stomach clenched with fear. "What kind of plans?" "They were talking about ways to force you to hand over the money. They mentioned something about making you sign papers, and one of the men said he knew someone who could forge medical documents to have you declared mentally incompetent." My world came crashing down. "Declare me insane?" "Yes, cousin. They were saying that if they got a medical paper stating you have dementia or some mental problem, they could get a judge to give them legal control over your money." My worst nightmares were becoming reality. My own son was conspiring with strangers to rob me not only of my money, but also my dignity and my freedom. "Zeke, are you sure of what you heard?" "Completely sure, cousin. That's why I came to warn you so early. I think you need to take steps to protect yourself, and you need to do it now." At that moment, the locksmith arrived, and while he was changing my locks, I called a lawyer that Gloria had recommended. I explained the whole situation, and he told me to come to his office immediately with all the documents from the sale of the ranch. "Mrs. Mary," the lawyer said, after reviewing all my papers, "you are in a very dangerous situation, but you are also in a very strong legal position. Everything is perfectly in order with the sale of your property, and no one can touch that money without your consent. However, if they are truly planning to declare you incompetent, we need to act quickly to protect you." "What can I do?" "First, we will get an independent medical evaluation to certify that you are completely sane and capable. Second, we will prepare legal documents to protect your assets. And third, if necessary, we will get a restraining order against your children." That day was one of the longest of my life. Between doctors, lawyers, and legal procedures, I realized my quiet life had turned into a nightmare. But I also realized something else. For the first time in years, I was fighting for something that truly mattered to me, and that fight was giving me a strength I didn't know I had. The next day, as I was returning from the pharmacy after buying some medication for my nerves that the doctor had prescribed, I saw Matt's black pickup truck parked in front of my house. But this time, he wasn't alone. There was another car I didn't recognize, a gray sedan with 2 men inside who seemed to be waiting for something. My heart began to pound so hard I could hear it in my ears. I remembered Zeke's words about the strange men Matt had been talking to at the bar, and I knew immediately that these must be them. I hid behind the large oak tree at the corner of my property and took out my cell phone to call Gloria. "Gloria," I whispered, "I'm hiding near my house. Matt is here with some men I don't know, and I think they're planning to do something terrible to me." "Where are you exactly?" Gloria asked in an alarmed voice. "Behind the oak tree, but I can't stay here forever. Mary, call the police right now." "And tell them what? That my son is visiting my house?" "You tell them you feel threatened and you need help. Meanwhile, I'm on my way." I hung up and dialed 911. But before I could speak to anyone, I heard Matt's voice shouting my name from my yard. "Mom, I know you're around here. We just want to talk to you. Don't be ridiculous and come out from wherever you're hiding." His tone did not sound like someone who just wanted to talk. It sounded like someone who was quickly losing patience. One of the men from the gray sedan got out of the car, and I could see him clearly for the first time. He was a tall guy with tattooed arms and a mean-looking face. He was wearing a tight black shirt that showed he worked out, and he walked with that aggressive swagger of someone used to intimidating people. "Are you sure she's here?" the man asked Matt. "She has to be. Her neighbor told me she saw her come back an hour ago." The second man also got out of the car. He was shorter but stockier, with a beer belly and a scar that ran across his left cheek from his ear to his mouth. He was wearing a baseball cap and torn jeans, and he had a way of moving that reminded me of the criminals you see on the news. "Look, Matt," said the man with the scar, "we don't have all day. If your mom doesn't want to cooperate the easy way, we'll have to use other methods to convince her." "Give me a few more minutes," Matt replied, and I could hear the desperation in his voice. "She has to show up." At that moment, Paula arrived in her white car, parking quickly and getting out with a furious look on her face. She was wearing a purple dress I had never seen before and high heels that were clearly not appropriate for walking on the dirt of my yard. "Have you found her yet?" she asked the men without even greeting her brother. "No, but we know she's close," replied the tattooed man. "This is ridiculous," Paula shouted, heading towards my house. "Mom, I know you can hear me. Stop acting like a child and come out and talk to us." From my hiding place behind the tree, I could see the 3 men and Paula moving around my property as if they owned it. Matt was checking behind the bushes, Paula was peering through the house windows, and the 2 strangers were walking around as if they were sizing up the place. "Are you sure she can't be inside the house?" the man with the scar asked Paula. "Impossible. She changed the locks yesterday, and we don't have the new keys." "That's not a problem," said the tattooed man with a smile that terrified me. "I can open any door in less than 5 minutes." "No," Matt shouted. "We can't break in. That would be trespassing." "So what do you suggest?" Paula asked impatiently. "We can't just stand here all day waiting for her to appear." Just then, I heard the sound of approaching sirens, and my heart leaped with relief. Apparently, when I had dialed 911, the call had connected even though I had hung up, and they had sent someone to investigate. The 4 conspirators heard the sirens too, and they immediately panicked. "Damn it!" yelled the man with the scar. Someone called the cops. "Let's get out of here now," said the tattooed one, running towards his car. "Wait," Matt shouted at them. "We can't just leave. It'll look too suspicious." But the 2 men had already jumped into their gray sedan and were starting the engine. They sped off my property, kicking up a cloud of dust just as the police car turned the corner. Paula and Matt were left standing there, trying to act as if nothing strange had happened, but I could see the panic on their faces. 2 police officers got out of the patrol car and approached my children. One of them was young, probably in his mid-20s, and the other was older, with a face that looked like he had seen a lot in his career. "Good afternoon," said the older officer. "We received an emergency call from this phone number, but the line was disconnected. Is everything all right here?" Matt managed to compose a fake smile. "Yes, officer, everything's fine. We were just visiting our mother." "And where is your mother?" asked the young officer, looking around. Paula quickly intervened. "She must be in town running errands. We got here and she wasn't home, so we decided to wait for her." "And the men we just saw leaving in the gray car?" asked the older officer suspiciously. "What men?" Matt lied shamelessly. "We don't know what you're talking about." At that moment, I decided to come out of hiding. I couldn't let my children continue to lie to the police, and besides, I realized it was safer to face the situation with the officers present. "Officers," I shouted, walking towards them. I made the call. Everyone turned to look at me. Matt and Paula had looks of pure terror, while the officers seemed confused. "Are you the owner of this house?" the older officer asked me. "Yes, I'm Mary, and these are my children. But officer, they came here with two men who scare me very much, and I had to hide because I feel threatened." "Mom, that's not true," Paula yelled. "We just came to visit you." "Why did you hide from your own children?" the young officer asked me. I briefly explained the situation, the sale of the ranch, the aggressive demands for money, the veiled threats, and the plans they had been making to declare me mentally incompetent. The officers listened attentively, especially when I mentioned the strange men who had been with my children. "Ma'am," said the older officer, "do you have any evidence of these threats?" "My cousin Zeke heard them talking at the bar last night. He can confirm it." Matt became very aggressive. "That's all lies. Our mother is making up stories because she doesn't want to give us the money we're legally entitled to." "What money?" asked the young officer. "The money from the sale of a ranch that was our father's inheritance," Paula replied. "She sold it without consulting us, and now she refuses to share the money with her family." "That ranch was mine," I said firmly. "I paid the taxes, I maintained it, and I had every legal right to sell it." The older officer looked at me with understanding. "Ma'am, do you want to file a formal complaint against your children?" Before I could answer, Matt exploded with rage. "This is ridiculous," he shouted, moving dangerously towards me. "That money is ours by right, and if you don't understand it the easy way, we'll make you understand the hard way." "Sir, step away from the lady," ordered the young officer, placing himself between Matt and me. But Matt had completely lost control. All the frustration and rage he had been accumulating for days burst out, and he lunged towards me with clenched fists. "You're going to give us that money right now," he yelled, shoving the young officer who was trying to stop him. What happened next was a blur. Matt managed to dodge both officers and came at me with such fury that I had no time to move away. His shove was so violent that it sent me flying backward, and I landed heavily on the flagstones of my garden path. The pain in my left side was indescribable, like a knife had been plunged into me and was being twisted. I screamed in agony as the police wrestled with Matt to handcuff him. Paula turned completely pale when she realized what her brother had done. "Matt, have you gone crazy?" From the ground, with unbearable pain shooting through my side, I could see the look of horror on Paula's face as the police cuffed Matt. My oldest son struggled like a wild animal, shouting obscenities and threats as the officers restrained him. "Let me go! That crazy old woman is stealing our money," he kept screaming, saliva dribbling from the corner of his mouth. The older officer immediately called for an ambulance on his radio, while the younger one kept Matt under control. Paula approached me, but when she tried to help me up, I screamed in pain. "Don't touch me! Get away from me!" I said, feeling tears stream down my cheeks, not just from the physical pain, but from the emotional betrayal. "Mom, Please, let me help you, Paula pleaded in a broken voice. Matt didn't mean to hurt you. He just lost control. He didn't mean to hurt me? I repeated in disbelief. Your brother just broke my ribs, and you're telling me he didn't mean to hurt me? The paramedics arrived in less than 10 minutes, and as they examined me to determine the severity of my injuries, I could hear the older officer questioning Paula about the men who had fled when the sirens arrived. Miss, I need you to tell me exactly who those men were and what they were doing here. Paula stammered, clearly nervous. I don't know them very well. They're friends of my brother's. Friends who fled when we arrived? Doesn't that seem suspicious to you? Officer, I didn't know they were going to come. Matt didn't tell me anything about bringing anyone else. One of the paramedics, a man in his 40s with very gentle hands, was carefully checking my side. Ma'am, you definitely have at least one fractured rib, possibly two. We need to take you to the hospital immediately for x-rays. As they lifted me onto the stretcher, I could see Matt being put into the patrol car. For a moment, our eyes met, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I saw something resembling regret in his eyes. Mom, he shouted from the car. I didn't want this to happen. I just wanted... It's too late, Matt, I yelled back, feeling all the emotional pain of years turn into words. It's too late for regrets. At the hospital, while I was getting x-rays and tests, Gloria arrived completely flustered. The poor woman had run so much she could barely breathe. Oh, Mary, how are you feeling? Does it hurt a lot? My soul hurts more than my body, Gloria. I can't believe my own son did this to me. And Paula? Where is she? I don't know, and I don't care. She was an accomplice to all of this. The doctor, a young man with a kind face, came to explain the results of the tests. Mrs. Mary, you have 2 fractured ribs on your left side. It's not a life-threatening injury, but it will be very painful for the next few weeks. You need complete rest and pain medication. Doctor, how long will I be like this? Ribs take about 6 to 8 weeks to heal completely. During that time, you can't do any physical exertion, you can't lift heavy things, and you have to be very careful when you move. While the doctor was explaining the care instructions, the older police officer arrived with a notebook in his hand. Mrs. Mary, I need to take a formal statement from you about what happened. Do you feel well enough to talk? Yes, officer. I want everything officially recorded. I told him the whole story from the beginning. The sale of the ranch, the initial demands for money, the escalating threats, the conspiracy to declare me incompetent, and finally, the physical assault. Ma'am, this is very serious. Your son is under arrest for assault on an elderly person, which is a felony. Do you want to press formal charges? The question hit me like a ton of bricks. It was one thing to be angry with Matt, and another thing entirely to send him to prison. But when I thought about everything that had happened, all the threats, all the malicious plans, I realized I had no other choice. Yes, officer, I want to press charges, not just for the physical attack, but for all the threats and intimidation. The officer nodded and continued taking notes. We will also investigate those men who were with him. Their description matches some known local criminals. That night, I stayed in the hospital for observation, and Gloria stayed with me. Around 10 p.m., I received a call I wasn't expecting. It was Paula, and from her voice, I could tell she had been crying. Mom, she said in a broken voice, I need to talk to you. Please. I have nothing to talk to you about, Paula. Mom, please. Matt is in jail, and this whole thing has gotten completely out of control. I never wanted you to be physically hurt. But you wanted me to be emotionally hurt. You wanted my money to be stolen. You wanted me to be declared insane. I didn't know about the insane part, Mom. That was Arthur's idea and those horrible men's. And why didn't you defend me? Why didn't you protect me when you knew they were planning to harm me?" Paula was silent for several seconds. "Why? Because we needed the money, Mom. We're in a very desperate situation." "Well, now you're in an even more desperate situation. Your brother is going to prison, and you will have to face the legal consequences of your actions. Mom, please don't let Matt go to prison. He has problems with alcohol and gambling, but he's not a bad person. He just needs help. Paula, your brother broke 2 of my ribs. He physically attacked me in front of the police. That's not something that can be forgiven with a simple apology. What if we give you back all the money we asked for? What if we promise to never bother you again? What money are you going to give me back when you never gave me a penny? And how can you promise not to bother me when you've just shown you're capable of anything?" The next day, when I was discharged from the hospital, my lawyer came to visit me at Gloria's house, where I would be staying during my recovery. "Mrs. Mary," the lawyer said, "I have important news. The police have arrested the 2 men who were with your son. It turns out they have criminal records for fraud and extortion. One of them confessed that your son had contacted them to help intimidate you. And what's going to happen now? Your son will face very serious charges: assault on an elderly person, conspiracy to commit fraud, and intimidation. He could get several years in prison." The news left me with very mixed feelings. On one hand, I was glad that justice was being served, but on the other hand, the thought of my own son spending years in prison broke my heart. And my daughter? Will she get into legal trouble too? That depends. If she cooperates with the investigation and testifies against the other conspirators, she might only get a warning. But if it's proven that she actively participated in the intimidation plans, she could also face charges. That afternoon, as I was resting on Gloria's sofa, with a pillow propped against my broken ribs, I received a completely unexpected visitor. It was Arthur, but he came alone and with a completely different attitude than he'd had at the diner. "Mother-in-law," he said humbly, "I know I have no right to be here, but I need to talk to you." "What do you want, Arthur? Are you here to threaten me too?" "No, mother-in-law. I've come to apologize and to tell you the truth about everything that happened." Gloria, who had been in the kitchen making tea, came out immediately upon hearing voices. "Mary, do you want me to call the police?" "No, Gloria. Let him talk. I want to hear what excuses he has." Arthur perched on the edge of the chair, clearly nervous. "Mother-in-law, the truth is, this was all my fault. I was the one who convinced Paula and Matt that you owed them part of the money." "Why did you do that, Arthur?" "Because we are in a desperate financial situation. We owe over $120,000 between credit card debt, bank loans, and money I owe to some very dangerous people." For the first time, I could see genuine fear in his eyes. "Dangerous people?" "Yes, mother-in-law, people who don't take excuses and who have threatened to hurt my family if I don't pay them soon." I was finally hearing the truth, and it was even worse than I had imagined. "And you thought the solution was to steal my money?" "It wasn't stealing, mother-in-law. I genuinely believed you had a moral obligation to help your family, but I realized I was wrong when I saw what happened to you yesterday." "You realized? You needed to see your brother-in-law breaking my ribs to realize you were doing something wrong?" Arthur hung his head, clearly ashamed. "Mother-in-law, I came here to apologize and to tell you that I'm going to testify in your favor at the trial. I'm going to confess my full involvement in this horrible plan." His words surprised me. "Why would you do that? Don't you realize that could get you into legal trouble?" "Because it's the right thing to do, mother-in-law, and because I hope that maybe, one day, you can find it in your heart to forgive my wife. Paula was led astray by my influence, but deep down, she loves you very much." Arthur's words left me completely bewildered. For all these days, I had been so focused on protecting myself and dealing with the betrayal that I hadn't had time to really process my own feelings towards my children. Yes, I was furious and hurt, but beneath all that anger, there was still love, a deeply wounded love, but love nonetheless. "Arthur," I said after several minutes of silence, "I appreciate you coming to apologize, but apologies don't heal broken ribs or erase death threats." "I know, mother-in-law, and I don't expect you to forgive me immediately. I just wanted you to know the truth, and I wanted to ask you for something." "What is it?" "When all this is over, when Matt gets out of prison, and we've paid for our mistakes, would there be any chance that we could rebuild this family? Not for the money, but because your grandchildren need you in their lives." The mention of my grandchildren struck me right in the heart. In this whole nightmare, I had tried not to think about them, about how all of this was going to affect them. They were innocent children who were not to blame for the terrible decisions their parents had made. "My grandchildren will always be welcome in my life," I said firmly, "but that doesn't mean I will automatically forgive their parents." "I understand, mother-in-law. I only ask that, with time, you consider the possibility." After Arthur left, Gloria and I sat in silence for a long time. Finally, she broke the silence with a question I had been avoiding thinking about. "Mary, what are you going to do with the money now?" It was the first time someone had asked me that question without ulterior motives, without trying to get something from me. Gloria asked out of genuine curiosity and because she cared about my well-being. "Gloria, I think it's time I told you what my real plans for that money were." I shifted on the sofa, trying to find a position that didn't hurt as much, and told my dear friend the secret I had been keeping since the day I received the purchase offer. "Do you remember my sister, Susan?" "Of course, the one who died of cancer 5 years ago. Before she died, Susan made me promise something. She made me promise that if I ever had the resources to do it, I would help other women who were going through what she went through." Gloria looked at me intently, waiting for me to continue. "Susan had to sell her house, her car, and even our mother's jewelry to pay for her cancer treatments. In the end, it wasn't enough, and she died in debt, having not received all the treatments she needed." Tears started to roll down my cheeks as I remembered my younger sister, who had fought so bravely against that terrible disease. My plan was to use the money from the sale to create a fund to help low-income women with cancer. Not all the money, of course. I was going to keep a portion for my own security, but the majority was going to be for fulfilling the promise I made to Susan. Gloria was silent for several seconds, and when she finally spoke, she had tears in her eyes. "Oh, Mary, you are an incredible woman. And to think your children wanted to steal that money that was going to help so many people in need. Gloria, the saddest part of it all is that if they had asked me with respect and affection about my plans, I might have found a way to help them too. But they never gave me the chance. They just assumed they had a right to my money and tried to take it by force. Are you going to go ahead with your original plans?" "Yes, Gloria, more than ever. This experience has taught me how important it is to help people who truly need it, not people who simply want to live beyond their means." The next day, I received a call from my lawyer with news about the case. "Mrs. Mary, I have important updates. Your son Matt has pleaded guilty to all charges and accepted a sentence of 2 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 1 year if he completes a rehabilitation program for alcoholism and gambling addiction." "And the other men?" "They both received longer sentences because they already had records. The main organizer of the plan to declare you incompetent got 5 years." "And my daughter?" "Your daughter decided to cooperate fully with the investigation and testify against everyone else. In return, she only received probation and is required to do community service for 1 year. Community service? Yes, specifically working with the elderly at a care center. The judge thought it would be appropriate given the circumstances. That afternoon, as I was resting in Gloria's garden, I received a visit I wasn't expecting. It was Paula, but she looked completely different from how I had seen her in weeks. She had lost weight, had deep dark circles under her eyes, and was wearing simple, old-looking clothes. "Mom," she said in a barely audible voice, "I know I have no right to be here, but I needed to see you before I start my community service." "What do you want, Paula?" "I want to ask for your forgiveness, Mom. Not a superficial apology, but a genuine forgiveness from a daughter to her mother." She sat in a chair near me, but kept a respectful distance. "Mom, these last few days, I've had a lot of time to think about everything that happened, and I realized that not only did I fail you as a daughter, but I became a person I don't even recognize myself. Paula, words are easy. Actions are what count." "I know, Mom. That's why I'm not asking you to forgive me right now. I'm just asking that maybe, over time, you could consider giving me a chance to show you that I can be better." "And Arthur, are you still married to him?" Paula looked down. "We're getting a divorce. I realized he was the one who manipulated me into acting against you, and I can't be married to someone who made me hurt my own mother." Her words surprised me. I hadn't expected her to make such a drastic decision. "And the children?" "The children are staying with me. Arthur agrees because he knows his debts put him in danger, and he doesn't want to expose the kids to those dangerous people." "How are you going to support them on your own?" "I got a part-time job in an office, in addition to the community service. It won't be easy, but I'd rather live with financial difficulties than live with the guilt of what I did to you." For the first time in weeks, I could see my real daughter underneath all the greed and manipulation. It was the girl I had raised, the young woman she had been before Arthur's influence corrupted her. "Paula, I have one condition for considering forgiving you one day." "Anything, Mom." "I want you to go to therapy. I want you to understand how you became capable of betraying your own mother, and I want you to make sure it never happens again." "I've already started, Mom. It's part of the terms of my probation, but even if it weren't mandatory, I would do it." "And what are you going to tell my grandchildren about all this?" "I'm going to tell them the truth, in a way that's appropriate for their age. I'm going to tell them that their mom made very serious mistakes, that she hurt their grandmother, and that she's working very hard to be a better person." After Paula left, I sat for hours thinking about everything that had happened. My life had completely changed in the span of a few weeks. I had lost trust in my children. I had been betrayed by my own family. I had suffered physical injuries, but I had also discovered an inner strength I didn't know I had. That evening, I called my lawyer to begin the process of establishing the foundation in memory of my sister Susan. I decided to call it the Susan's Hope Foundation and dedicate it specifically to helping low-income women who were fighting cancer. 3 months later, when my ribs had fully healed, I held the official opening ceremony for the foundation. Gloria was there with me, along with several neighbors and community members who had known Susan. To my surprise, Paula also came, but she stayed at the back of the event, without approaching me. After the ceremony, she came up timidly. "Mom," she said, "I just wanted to say that I'm very proud of what you're doing. Aunt Susan would be happy to know that her memory is helping so many women." "Thank you, Paula." "Mom, do you think we can ever have a normal relationship again?" I looked at her for several seconds before answering. "Paula, I don't think we'll ever have the relationship we had before, because that relationship was based on a trust that has been broken. But maybe, with a lot of time and a lot of work, we can build something new." That's all I can ask for, Mom. 6 months later, I received a letter from Matt from prison. It was the first communication I had had with him since the day he broke my ribs. Mom, the letter said, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know that every day in this prison, I think about what I did to you, and every day I hate myself more for it. I'm in a recovery program for alcoholics and gambling addicts, and for the first time in years, I'm starting to understand how sick I was. I'm not asking you to forgive me, because I know that will take a long time if it ever happens. I just wanted you to know that I am deeply sorry, and that when I get out of here, I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life to trying to make up for the harm I caused you. When I finished reading the letter, I realized that for the first time since all this began, I didn't feel rage towards my children. I hadn't completely forgiven them, and maybe I never fully would, but I had found something close to peace. Today, a year after selling the ranch, my life is completely different. The Susan's Hope Foundation has helped over 50 women with their cancer treatments. Paula has finished her community service and has proven to be a responsible mother who is raising my grandchildren well. Matt will be released from prison in 6 months, and while I don't know if we'll be able to rebuild our relationship, at least I know he is working on becoming a better person. And I have learned something fundamental, that money isn't the most important thing in life, but self-respect is. I learned that it's okay to say no, even to family. I learned that protecting what is yours doesn't make you a selfish person, but a strong one. And above all, I learned that sometimes the most painful mistakes can lead you to discover who you really are and what you're capable of. My name is Mary. I'm 65 years old, and I finally learned to value myself as much as I always valued others.